So we are going to get started here. It's hi, everyone. It's 1 o'clock on the East Coast, and as always, we'll try to start our call on time. I'm going to go ahead and put everyone on mute now, but if you have a question or a comment, go ahead and press 1 on your keypad so I can unmute you. My name is Ben Gubitz, Associate Director over here at American Promise, and welcome to another American Promise Citizen Uprising Core Team call. This is a call that happens on the second Saturday of each month. And so before we were doing the second and fourth Thursday of each month, and I just want to talk a little bit about the reason why we changed it up to Saturdays. And the reason is we don't just want great calls, we want great action coming out of the calls. And two ingredients of that great action are teams of people that come together for the calls, and then also staying the hour afterwards to support each other in taking that action. And that was not really possible with the Thursday night calls because folks on the West Coast groups would have to meet around 5:30, which wasn't really practical for people coming from work. And people on the East Coast obviously would be on till about 10:30 at night, which also wasn't great unless they're having a slumber party. So thanks to everyone that's taken the time out of your busy weekend to join us today and are stepping up to save our democracy. We're honored to have our guest speaker, Jeff Clements, and wonderful coach Sam Daley-Harris back to begin our 2-month training on powerful meetings with members of Congress or state legislators and moving elected officials up the champion scale. And I'm going to introduce Jeff here in just a few minutes, but just wanted to start with a few opening remarks. Today is actually a special day in American history. Exactly 104 years ago on this date, April 8th, Americans ratified the 17th Amendment, allowing for the direct election of senators. And I think often we forget that our senators were not elected but appointed by corrupt legislators. And as Doris Kearns Goodwin, award-winning author and American Promise Advisory Council member, reminds us, that these corrupt legislators were being bribed by businessmen to get a seat in the Senate. So one senator would be called the coal senator, another guy would be the oil senator, another guy would be the beef senator. And Woodrow Wilson was elected president around the same time, the year before, and the year before ratification of the 17th Amendment, and was quoted as saying, "The government, which was designed for the people, has got into the hands of the bosses and their employers and the special interests. An invisible empire has been set up above the forms of democracy." And I think that probably sounds familiar to quite a few of us on the phone, but guess what? You know, Americans stepped up, as we always do, and demanded equal representation, and the 17th Amendment was passed. So we've been through this before, people, and, I believe that you're all on this call today because you believe that we can do it again. And that's what these calls are all about. So as you join these APA and core team calls the second Saturday of each month, I hope that you'll find inspiration and empowerment to get into action. And the action coming out of these calls is the most important element. And we hope that you'll invite friends in your community to join the calls with you and support each other in taking action after the call. Also, thanks to everyone that's on the call who's already started an American Promise Association, or as we call them, APA, or in the process of starting a new APA. Like those being launched in Charlottesville, Virginia, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Montclair, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Akron, Ohio, and a number of others. And if you're interested in starting a new APA and having Joyce or I support the inviting process and come to your city for the launch, send me an email at beng@americanpromise.net. Once again, it's beng@americanpromise.net. So moving on, I'm excited to welcome Jeff Clements, co-founder and president of American Promise, who's with us today, to provide some background on Citizens United and why this fight for the 28th Amendment is so critical in our time. And also keep in mind there's going to be a lot of time for Q&A with Jeff. So as he's speaking, be thinking about some questions you might want to ask. And when the question section comes, I'll ask you to hit 1 on your keypad so we know to call on you. And before you take it away, Jeff, let me give you an idea of the kind of folks that are on this call, even though I know you know many who are participating. You're talking to folks like Madeline in Virginia. Madeline is a dietitian that could not stand the use of pesticides or genetically modified sugar beans and saw firsthand the impact the big corporate food industry was having on the health and well-being of her neighbors. So she decided that that was enough. she was going to devote all of her free time to standing up to big corporate overreach in our government. And she's leading the APA launch in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is really exciting. So that's just an example of the kind of folks on this call. So Jeff, go ahead and take it away. And I'm going to ask you to start, Jeff, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just give us a little bit of a background of how we got here in the first place, a little bit brief history of Citizens United.
Sure, Ben. Happy to do that. And hello, everybody. I'm really glad to join you. I'm actually calling in, as I said, from Kansas City. There's a terrific sort of conference here called Unrig the System, and it's an extraordinary gathering of Democrats, Republicans, independents, all of whom are committed to that very cause, unrigging the system. So we've got a few American Promise members, Winston Apple and others from the Kansas City APA here, and they're actively participating. I stepped out to join you on this call, but really glad to be here. So Ben asked, how did we get here? How are we facing the daunting challenge, which we will overcome, of winning a constitutional amendment? Why an amendment? Well, we talk about Citizens United a lot, and I want to just give some context, at least from my experience, and then look forward to opening it up to conversation. But I came to this, like many of you, after the Citizens United decision. I filed a brief in the case in the Supreme Court. I had seen what had happened to our democracy leading to the Citizens United decision in 2010, and realized that decision was the end game of some trends that had been happening. And those two trends are what we face as a country that we have to overcome with this amendment. Basically, the court in the Citizens United decision overturned a whole bunch of cases and a whole bunch of law that had gone back a century, trying to keep money, concentrated money, from overwhelming our political system. And so I know many of you know that, and the details of it we could get into, and striking down the McCain-Feingold law, saying corporations and unions have unlimited rights to spend money. But it's important to think about, it's not just a one-off case. It was both a culmination of trends to basically empower money over people, and corporations to take them from very effective concentrators of wealth and power in the economy into very effective concentrators of wealth and power in our political system, and stripping us of our rights and responsibilities, frankly, to try to prevent that from overwhelming our political system. And so a lot of people don't realize necessarily the Citizens United case was in some ways the beginning of a very rapid lockdown on the political equality, the equal rights of every American to be represented, and has led to the destabilization and the kind of crisis we see in our country. So right after Citizens United, within probably 18 months, I helped out in Montana. Maybe there's some folks on the call from Montana, when Steve Bullock, the Attorney General at the time, said Citizens United could not have meant that Montana and the states don't have the right to keep corporate money out of our elections. We've done it for 100 years. Montana had a Corrupt Practices Act preventing corporate money from being spent in elections. Steve Bullock testified in Congress, where I was shortly after Citizens United. He said Montana had a real citizen legislature. Average cost of the winners was something like $17,000. And he warned what would happen now if Montana could not keep corporate money out of elections, as they had done since 1913. Well, needless to say, a dark money super PAC called American Tradition Partnership, they always have good names, sued the state of Montana. We helped defend the case, went up to the Supreme Court. We actually won in the Montana Supreme Court, but went up to the U.S. Supreme Court, and they used Citizens United to strike down Montana's law and the law of the majority of states that was similar. So when people say it overturned a century of law, that's literally true. A century ago, we lived in a gilded age where money dominated our system. Women didn't have the vote. Senators weren't elected. Amendments changed all that, but so did states and people stepping up to take on money in politics. That was all stripped away in the American Tradition Partnership case not long after Citizens United. Then, as many of you know, shortly after that, the McCutcheon case blew away the aggregate limits, as it was called, the idea that $173,000 was the limit to give to all the federal candidates. And Sean McCutcheon, a coal company CEO, sued. Can you imagine thinking that if you couldn't give more than $173,000 to politicians, somehow your free speech rights were being violated? That's what he did, he thought, and the Supreme Court agreed. So that got blown away. We then saw in Arizona a public financing system got blown away by the Supreme Court in a case called Arizona Free Enterprise PAC. So there's been this rapid series of cases, almost too quickly for the American people to realize what was going on. But we have lost even the most basic ways of keeping money from doing exactly what the framers and the founders of the Constitution worried about most, which is taking a republic and turning it into an oligarchy. So that's where we are. We got here because of the pressures of money to exert power in our political system, and because the Supreme Court went on an ideological crusade, beginning with Citizens United, that really just took a problem of money in politics, which existed before Citizens United, and turned it into constitutional crisis. And that's our opportunity, frankly. Usually amendments follow when the Supreme Court tries to lock down an unjust and wrong system. That's what the Dred Scott case was about. That's what when the Supreme Court said slavery was fine. That's when the Supreme Court said women have no right to vote. The Supreme Court said a poll tax is fine. It's usually when the Supreme Court tries to lock in a status quo that is really hurting the American promise of equal rights for everybody, that the American people step up. So that's the opportunity, but that's how we got here. It's a constitutional crisis. It was a very well-funded campaign to lead to those cases. They didn't just happen. There's a book on it I'd recommend. My own, of course. Corporations are not people, but it's a longer story than we can do on the call. But it was a very strategic, well-funded campaign to essentially strip Americans of our rights to be represented equally and to participate on an equal basis in our political system.
Yeah, that's a great background, Jeff. And I know that you mentioned we're in a constitutional crisis. I'm wondering if you can outline a few of the impacts that we're seeing now in our society, and why folks on the call should care that this is happening, and what are some of the negative impacts that we're seeing today.
Yeah, great question, because constitutional crisis is something we should respond to, but I think mostly we respond because we feel it in our own lives, and we think about it for our kids and next generation. And I think that's number one. Are we going to be able to do what every generation has had to do, and try to pass on a chance at a effective Republican democracy in America? And that's a big thing. I think it's a bigger deal than sometimes people think. Americans actually really believe in that promise of our country, and a lot of people will say, oh, you have to make the connection between the money in politics and the paycheck, or money in politics and the environment, and all that's true, but it's also true that most Americans respond to the unwillingness to accept that we let the country down when it was in a crisis. So I just want to say that's very important too. But I think we all have our own stories and can see what's happening when concentrated wealth controls. It doesn't just control because it wants to. It controls because there are specific interests that are at war. And basically we have competing factions of wealth. That's what oligarchy is, competing factions of wealthy interests. And you have the fossil fuel industry putting billions of dollars into all kinds of ways of trying to influence to preserve an industry that's under a great deal of stress because of the climate catastrophe and the need to shift from that. You could take it from a more conservative perspective and look at, we have $20 trillion in debt. the national debt now $20 trillion, and the Congress is essentially incapable of taking that on seriously because of the wealthy, powerful interests that will prevent action on that. I think we see it in where government investment goes and doesn't go. So you can see it in all kinds of different ways, and that's on the federal level. Once you drill down to the states and the local governments, it's even more the case. So I'd be happy to talk more about each of those in different ways, and whether it's healthcare or anything else. You can see what happens when the people aren't adequately represented because money has undue influence. But I think probably most people on the call could also connect those dots as well.
Yeah, certainly, Jeff. And we're going to open it up for questions for Jeff in just a few minutes. But I have one more question, Jeff. So, we've got a little bit of background. We understand why this issue is so critical. And you gave a little bit of a historical context of how we've passed amendments before. I think a lot of folks on the line would be surprised to know that we passed 12 amendments in the 20th century. And Jeff, if you can just talk a little bit about your optimism and our duty as Americans to pass amendments, and we do this regularly. If you wouldn't mind just talking a little bit about that would be great.
Yeah, sure, and I am optimistic. I am truly optimistic, and know we will do this because I don't doubt that the previous 27 amendments were just as hard. The Americans were Americans then and dealt with problems as big as ours, the Civil War, for example, and many others, and we did it. And American Promise, we have our pocket constitutions available on the website. I went through mine here in Kansas City because I'm about to talk with the folks here, and I realized, Justice Gorsuch, who just went on the Supreme Court, claims to be an originalist and emphasizes how important the framers of the Constitution in 1789 and what they intended should count. I realized there are about 8 pages in the Constitution that we have for the original Constitution, and there are 16 pages of amendments. So literally the framers of the Constitution are the American people who want amendments. And if we think about what those amendments have done, as you said, Ben, the election of senators so that we the people had a vote for senators. Today's the anniversary of the ratification of that amendment in 1913. Women having the right to vote. We sent out the great movie Iron-Jawed Angels to American Promise folks this week. And if you think that was easy, watch that movie. That was so hard to get women the right to vote. And imagine if we didn't have that amendment. Getting the poll tax eliminated, so people didn't have that economic barrier and it couldn't be misused to keep African Americans especially away from the polls. Just every time that it has come to a constitutional crisis where on the one hand we would break the American promise and say, no, we're going to agree with the Supreme Court and inequality is just fine and equal representation isn't required. Every single time that has come to a fight, we win that fight. And this is our fight. And the progress we've made, thanks to so many people on the call, and George in Wisconsin, congratulations, 8 more communities just this week passing amendment resolutions. This is on fire, and it's our job just to keep it going, and we will win.
Yes, we will, Jeff. Thanks so much. So we're going to open it up for questions. If you have a question or comment, but more so a question for Jeff, this is a great opportunity to ask him. So press 1 on your keypad so I know that you have a question and I can call on you. But we're going to start with Nancy Newhart. Nancy, where are you calling in from?
Hi there. I'm standing in the rain here, ready to go in to see my local Representative Mark DeSaulnier in District 11 in California. So I'm going to be jumping off this call at 10:30 because he'll start speaking then. But I was interested in this call. I got the information, so I thought I'd come on and see what you were about.
Yeah. I noticed that you had pressed something on your keypad to indicate that you had a question. Do you have a question for Jeff? Perhaps something that might be helpful when you go to see your representative?
I may have accidentally pressed that. Sorry.
Oh, no problem.
That's all right, Nancy. We're glad to have you on the call, and stay dry. And ask your senator while you're in there to support the 28th Amendment to the Constitution to overturn Citizens United. And thanks again, and welcome to American Promise.
Yeah,
thanks,
you. Nancy.
I would like to ask a question now that I'm thinking about it. This is one thing I was going to pose to Mark DeSaulnier. So with our current law with Roe v. Wade and marriage equality, if Congress decided to try to overturn that, what are the procedures? Does the president have to sign off on that, or can they just go ahead and vote that, or does it go to the Supreme Court? What's the streamline on that?
Well, it's a good question whether it's about Roe versus Wade or the Citizens United overturning that with an amendment. Any amendment is basically when the Supreme Court interprets the Constitution, as they did in Roe versus Wade and as they did in Citizens United. If the American people disagree with that decision, there are two ways it changes. One, the Supreme Court can change its mind. That's what happened in Brown versus Board of Education, that the Supreme Court reversed 70 years of segregation being the law of the land after Plessy versus Ferguson. Or the American people can say, Supreme Court, you're wrong, and do a constitutional amendment, which is what we're doing about the Citizens United case. And to do an amendment, which has 8 times reversed the Supreme Court decisions, you need to get 2/3 of Congress. Excuse me. You get 2/3 of Congress to vote out the amendment. Excuse me, and then you get it ratified by 3/4 of the states. So the president, interestingly, doesn't actually have a role with a constitutional amendment. There's no signature required. It's just 2/3 of Congress, and then it gets ratified by 3/4 of the states. Under Article 5, which is the amendment provision, there's a possibility 2/3 of the states could call a constitutional convention or call on Congress to call one and propose amendments that way. It's never happened. It has been used to pressure Congress to get the vote of 2/3 on previous amendments. But in either case, it has to go through ratification through 3/4 of the states, and that's 38 states. So it's a process. And so I think Congress can't do anything to overturn the Supreme Court by itself. All it can do is propose an amendment, and that's what we're building up the movement to pressure to get that 2/3 vote. But then it still has to get ratified by 3/4 of the states. So that it really is a process that involves all the American people. And as we've demonstrated over and over again, many people on this call, with these initiatives to call for the 28th Amendment, the American people are ready for this one.
Thanks, Jeff. Good question, Nancy. Let's go to Elizabeth Winchester. Hi, Elizabeth. Where are you calling in from?
I'm calling from Illinois. My question is, what is the name of Jeff's book?
Oh, thanks, Elizabeth, and welcome. The book is called Corporations Are Not People, Reclaiming American Democracy from Big Money and Global Corporations. And it's available in any bookstores can get it, or on Amazon. Or actually at our own store at AmericanPromise.net. You can get it there too, and that will support American Promise. So Corporations Are Not People. It's got a foreword by the great Bill Moyers, and if you don't like it, money back guarantee.
Thank you.
Yeah, Elizabeth, maybe we'll get Jeff out to Illinois to come see you, and he'll sign it for you. Let's go to Susan Sandoval. Susan, where are you calling in from?
Hi, Ben. Hi, Jeff. I'm calling from New York. I actually attended the conference when you guys had it last year. My question is, what do you think in recent light of the Republicans using the nuclear option, the simple majority rule, to put Gorsuch through? How do you feel that will impact overturning Citizens United? And I guess what would be like your strategy, moving forward? Because I'm kind of worried about, being able to do this now.
Oh, well, thanks, Susan. Thanks for being on the call, and thanks for coming to the conference. We're going to have another one, and hope to see you there, if not before, in a few months. So actually, I feel the opposite. I am so glad that we started American Promise. I am so glad so many Americans stepped up in the past 5-6 years in all different organizations and in their own communities to not listen to the so-called sophisticated analysis that an amendment isn't possible or somehow the Supreme Court will fix its own mistake. Now it's very clear we chose the right strategy. It's the only way we are going to get Citizens United overturned and get our democracy back is with this 28th Amendment. Because what happened this week is Justice Gorsuch, now Justice Gorsuch, who was confirmed by the Senate and the filibuster rule, the 60-vote margin that used to be required for any Supreme Court nominee, was eliminated. We now have a further lockdown in the Supreme Court of the possibility of that one other way of overturning cases, which is the Supreme Court. There were those, and many, usually lawyers, I confess, is one, or law professors who said, "Oh no, just don't do an amendment. We, the lawyers, will fix it. We'll just get a case into the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will overturn it. We'll get, Hillary Clinton elected, and she'll appoint the right justice, and then we'll win." Well, didn't turn out that way. Justice Gorsuch could be on the court for 30 years. This president might get several more appointments. And we are a cross-partisan organization, and our strategy was always we can't rely on a Supreme Court strategy. So the amendment is exactly the right thing to do now because there isn't a viable strategy to bring a case to the Supreme Court to get Citizens United overturned because Justice Gorsuch is a supporter of the decision. And so, the challenge is the same challenge we had before, which is a 28th Amendment isn't easy. But I think we've already seen this, just more and more energy for it because Americans, I think, are realizing we have to take this matter into our own hands. Just like Congress was dominated by this ideology of money and increasingly our state governments and now the Supreme Court for the foreseeable future.
Great question, Susan. Thanks, Jeff. I think we have time for just one more, Jeff, and then I know you got to go out there in Kansas City. So let's go to Barbara Gregory. Barbara, where are you calling in from?
Hi, Naples, Florida.
Welcome.
Actually, my question was answered. I was looking for the title of the book.
Oh, good. Okay.
But I'm here with a friend of mine, and do we have any other questions? I guess my only question is, okay, we all get it, at least those of us that are on this call, and those of us that are dedicated. What do we do? How do we get this amendment pushed through? What actions can we take?
Great question, Barbara, and thanks for calling in. And I was in Naples not long ago, and it was good to be there. So I am going to use that to segue right back to Ben, because exactly what we do is what the National Citizen Uprising is all about, what this core team is all about, and we at American Promise are committed to making sure every American, no matter where we live, doesn't matter, red state, blue state, none of that matters, wherever any American lives can actually take specific action and join together with others in their community to build this movement, because that's how we're going to win. We're going to keep doing what United to Amend in Wisconsin, George is doing with local resolutions, and many others are doing in other states. We're going to get ballot initiatives. We're going to keep pushing until we make Congress do this, and then we take it to our states for ratification. And we have to trust that the little things and some of the big things that we each can be asked to do, whether it's to make a phone call or host a party to watch Iron Jawed Angels, or to increase the people come into your home to call together onto the core team calls, really does make a difference because it's happening all over the country. So let me thank all of you and then turn it back to Ben to just give a little bit more specific answer to Barbara's question about what we all can do. I do have to go back in and I'm on stage here in a couple of minutes, so I got to run into there. But thank you, Barbara, and thanks to everybody for all the great work you do. And let's just keep this going.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. Thanks for joining in Kansas City, and good luck out there. And Barbara, right. I hope, thank you so much, Jeff. Barbara, thanks for the question. I hope you plan on sticking around for the rest of the call. We're going to have very concrete action items and next steps coming out of this call that will help us all get involved in support of the 28th Amendment. But as Jeff mentioned, there is a national citizen uprising underway. This is a 50-state campaign that involves ballot initiatives, legislative resolutions, and certainly, moving members of Congress up the champion scale, which Sam Daley-Harris is going to talk about here in just a few minutes. So, Barbara, hold on to that, and we're going to get to some very, concrete action items and next steps coming out of this call in support for this amendment. So, Sam, I'm going to kick it over to you in a few minutes here, but before I kick it over to you, I'd really quickly like to welcome Bruce Berlin in Santa Fe, New Mexico, who I had the great pleasure of seeing just a couple of weeks ago for a 28th Amendment training. And Bruce is just going to talk a little bit about that training and some grassroots victories on the ground. So, Bruce, how you doing? Hey, Bruce, you with us? Oh, you might be on mute, Bruce, if you want to unmute yourself. Okay.
How's that?
No problem. Oh,
can you hear me?
Go. Okay. I can hear you now. Yep.
Okay. So yeah, Ben came out to Santa Fe last Saturday, and we had about 80 people at a training that he conducted. Very enthusiastic. Practically all the evaluations I've gotten back so far have been excellent or very good, and people were really enthused. And I think we generated a lot of interest from some people who were newbies to the process or to the program. And we're going to be following up this coming Wednesday with a conference call with Ben. I don't know, there was just a lot of interaction. There was, I actually encourage everybody to get Ben to come to your community and do the same training, because it does generate a lot of interest and gives people maybe a greater focus and a greater commitment.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Bruce. Hey, can you tell us any kind of obstacles or hurdles that you had to overcome to pull this off and make this a successful event?
Well, actually, we had a lot of good luck because we got the place for free and we got food for free, so and we got you for free. So there was no cost, which is really great. The one thing that mistake or something that we didn't do that we should have done was gotten some press there, so to publicize it and to get more people, even if they couldn't come, to at least know about it and to understand, get some understanding of what was going on and how they could participate in the future. So obviously public relations and press and media is really important to this process, because there's, I don't know how many people are on this call or how many people are involved in AT nationally, but there's many, 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 many more people that need to be involved. And getting the word out through radio, TV, and newspapers and whatnot is critical.
Certainly. Yeah, that's great, Bruce. And it was great to see you, and thanks for having me out.
I had a question I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
Well, I had a question for Jeff, who obviously is not there anymore, but maybe you could answer it. So this is obviously a long-term process. In one of the videos that you showed at the training last week, I think Jeff was quoted as the goal is to have this done by the 250th anniversary of the country in 2026, which is 9 years away. Meanwhile, we're bombing Syria, we're losing the environmental protection, et cetera, day by day. So what do you tell people that, yes, this is a long-term strategy and we need to do it, but what do I do today, not necessarily for the 28th Amendment, but to push the tide back while we're working on this, because by 2026, it may be too late. So obviously, as things go on with the Trump administration, people are getting more and more nervous and fearful. So what do you tell those people?
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. And that's a good question, right? And I think that, certainly, there are, kind of short-term things that need to be fixed right away, and also this 28th Amendment for the long-term structural reform. And there are a lot of good things that we can work on in the meantime, whether it's, disclosure or transparency laws or anti-corruption laws, things that groups like Represent Us do a really great job at putting forward in state legislatures that you can support. But, there is with the help of many Americans and millions of the folks that believe in this 28th Amendment, hopefully we'll get there before 2026. But this long-term structural change does take time. And as Jeff had mentioned before, we face this constitutional crisis. And in order to fix this constitutional crisis, it will take some time. But this is certainly, in my opinion, the most important thing that we can focus on in terms of, our foreign policy and things like that you mentioned, Bruce. I would encourage folks to get involved in your local community however you can, but certainly keeping our eye on the prize for this much-needed structural reform is just so critical. But that's a good question, Bruce, and we can come back to that later if you want. But we are running a little bit over time, so I do want to kick it over to our good friend Sam Daley-Harris. Welcome, Sam. Great to hear from you. Sam's going to continue on our great training program and lead us into what we're going to be focusing on in the next coming months, which is grassroots lobbying. So welcome back, Sam. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, great. Congratulations to Bruce in Santa Fe for the great work last Saturday. Hi, everyone. Remember what Ben said earlier. American Promise is in the process of starting APAs. I think 15 of them. He mentioned about 6. In the end, this work comes most alive in the context of group support, having people around you who will support each other in getting their letters to the editor sent, or support each other in getting the meetings with members of Congress scheduled. So if you're on for starting an APA with Ben and Joyce's support, and Ben or Joyce coming out like he did last week in Santa Fe, write them and let them know. BenG@AmericanPromise.net. BenG@AmericanPromise.net. And if you're not on for such a big launch with them coming out, then just bring a few others together to start a core team on your own. Doing this work with a small or large committed group of others makes a big difference. So if you're able to get online to do some research during this section, please do that now. The main action for April and May is getting a meeting with your U.S. representative or state legislator or their staff, identifying others to go with you, planning and rehearsing the meeting, having a great meeting, and then doing great follow-up. Just as I'm coaching American Promise, another of the groups I coach is Citizens Climate Lobby. Their volunteers had 1,388 meetings with members of Congress or their staff last year. That's up from 106 meetings in 2010. They've played a key role in enrolling 17 House Republicans in co-sponsoring a resolution stating that climate change is real and requires public and private solutions. And at the moment, in all of the money out of politics bills in Congress, there's only one Republican co-sponsor. This is an area where American Promise can cause a big breakthrough. So why are we doing this? Please press 1 on your keypad if you can tell us why we're working to schedule and have great meetings with our members of Congress or state legislators, for those who are working on state legislation. We're not talking about going to town hall meetings. That's great. We should go to those. But scheduling a face-to-face meeting, if you can tell us why we'll be working on having face-to-face meetings with our members of Congress or state legislators, press 1. And when Ben calls on you, give your name and city and go ahead. So Ben, do we have anyone pressing 1 who'd like to tell us why are we doing this?
Nope, not yet, Sam.
Okay, I'm going to keep going, but let me say it a different way. I think when we did letters to the editor the first 2 months, almost none of the people who had a letter published had ever done it before. And I'm going to assume that very many of us have never had a face-to-face private meeting with our group and a member of Congress before. This is where the champion scale work we did several calls ago also comes in. Who can tell us something about the champion scale, starting with members of Congress or state legislators who might be opposed to overturning Citizens United? Why is this champion scale so important? Press 1 on your keypad, and when Ben calls on you, give your name and city. Who can tell us something about the champion scale and why it's important to this action over these couple of months. Ben, let me know if anyone's pressing 1, and you can call on them, and I'll have them give their name and city. Do we have anyone? I'm not going to skip over this one. I'm going to see if we got anyone. I know we have newcomers who weren't on those calls, but I'd like to see if there's someone who was on the earlier call.
Yep.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Sam. I was on mute. George Penn.
Who is that, George? Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Nope. Oh, great. What city are you in? Oops, you went.
You can't
Go
hear.
ahead. Yeah, I hear you now.
Oh, you do? Good. I don't know how to unmute, so I'm glad Ben did it. I'm in Madison, Wisconsin.
Great. Go ahead. What can you tell us about the champion scale and why it matters?
No, I pressed before that because I can't tell you about the champion scale, but I can tell you why. We are considering and trying to see if we can meet with legislators at the state level.
Go for it. Go for it.
In our state, we are the emblem of the Republican takeover. Most of you probably know that. We can't get our leaders who own the legislature to do this, and they just tell it to our face. So we're not going to change them. However, we need to educate our people on how to do this when we have a better legislature, for one. That's one reason. And two is to try to just educate legislators, to educate the legislators who might listen a little bit in case the situation changes, and then to educate our volunteers on how to do this so that when we do have an opportunity, we're ready for them.
Okay, great. So I'm going to challenge, that's great, and I'm going to challenge one thing you said. We have legislators that tell them, no way, Jose, we can't do that, no way, to our face. And I just want to say, when Citizen Climate Lobby was working on their climate change work 2.5 years ago, they would get 0 House Republicans on such a resolution, now 17. So there's something going on there we need to figure out about. And so, Ben, I'm going to ask you to send the recording on the, go ahead. You have someone else?
I was just going to say there's a couple more hands up. If you wouldn't mind, maybe we can take one of those, Sam. Let's go to
Great. I'm looking for the champion scale. Who's the first person?
Richard Fazek.
Oh.
Richard, where are you?
Yeah, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes. You're a little loud, but go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm in Los Angeles, California, and one of the things that we worked very hard on, first to get Proposition 49 on the ballot out here in California, and then when the state Supreme Court pulled that off, we got 59 on working with both the Assembly and the Senate, and California voters passed it in November. So I think that's an important step for different people to do in different states to put the voters of an entire state on record as favoring the overturn of Citizens United.
Great. Thanks,
Brilliant.
Richard.
That's great. And so we're going to go on, Ben. So the thing, though, is Prop 59 in California was fabulous. And the question is, do our elected officials, let's say in Congress, are they supporters of that move, or are they stronger up the champion scale? Are they advocating for overturning Citizens United, or are they leading on that move, or are they champions? So we really want to get those who are opposed up to neutral, those who are neutral up to being supporters, and then we don't want to stop there. Remember, of all the bills in Congress on getting money out of politics, there's only one Republican co-sponsor. That's where American Promise can turn things around. Even if your member of Congress is a Democrat, who do you know in a neighboring congressional district who has a Republican congressperson? You can either bring them into the process now, encourage them to listen to the recording of this call and join the other calls, bring them to your meeting when you get it set up with your member of Congress or state legislator, and then coach them on getting a meeting with their own Republican member of Congress. And you can go along with them for support. So how do we get a meeting? This is where I'd like you to do some online research if you're able. I have some instructions, but I'd like to hear from you first. Who's done this before and can tell us what you need to do to get a meeting with your member of Congress or state legislator? and that might include finding the name of your federal or state representative. Press 1 on your keypad, and when Ben calls on you, give your name and city and go ahead. What do you need to do to get a meeting with your member of Congress? If you do, so Ben, let me know if anyone's on for that question.
Nope, not yet, Sam.
Okay. I'll just wait just a moment, and then I'll answer myself, but let's see if anyone's got some feedback. Not yet?
Nope.
Okay, great. So I'm going to keep going. So here's the deal. First of all, you might not know the name of your U.S. representative or your state legislator. If you don't know the name, jot this down or Google it right now. You either Google, who is my U.S. representative, if you're looking for your congressperson's name, or if you're looking for your state legislator, you Google, who is my state representative, and then the name of your state. So I would Google, who is my state representative, NJ, for New Jersey, and you would Google, who is my state representative, and then put your state's name or initials into your Google search. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you don't know the name of your U.S. or state representative, pick one or the other, Google that now, as in who is my U.S. representative, or who is my state representative, and then your state's name right after that. If you do know the name of your representative, go to their website and look up how to schedule a meeting with them. So you should either be looking up the name of your state or federal rep's name, or going to their website and looking for how you schedule a meeting with them. I've already done that with a couple of reps, and I'll read that in a moment. But if you have a question, including which one should I meet with, state or federal, or you found out how to schedule a meeting from their website, push 1 on your keypad, and Ben will call on you. So it might be that you have a question. It might be that you didn't know the name of your rep or your federal or state rep, and you've just found it. You can let us know what you found. Or it might be that you've gone to their website and you found how to schedule a meeting, and you want to let us know what you have to do. So is anyone able to tell us one of those things, including a question? Ben, let me know.
Barbara Gregory?
Yeah, Barbara, where are you?
Hi, it's me again. The question for
sorry, I'm getting old. So me again, where?
Oh, I'm sorry. In Naples, Florida. I'm with.
You're still in Naples. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm with a co-organizer. The question is.
Okay, I think she might have either pressed mute or hung up on us. So Barbara, if you come back, let us know.
Barbara, you still with us there, Barbara?
Hello?
Yep,
yeah, go on. We hear you now.
Okay. This is like getting to meet with your congressperson 101. We know how to do that. What is the pitch? If your congressperson
That's coming. You're good. You're great. You're way ahead of us. That's coming. What we need is Ben, who's pushing the button, and tell us what they found about meeting with their member of Congress, and then we'll get to what's the pitch. Ben, do we have anyone?
Impossible. It's almost impossible is what we found.
Yeah, it's almost impossible when you do it alone or you don't persist. Because if you persist, you'll get a meeting with their aide. And if you have a great meeting with their aide are going to say, these guys have it together. The congressman ought to meet with them. I'm going to help set that meeting up. So Citizens Climate Lobby volunteers had 1,388 meetings with members of Congress or their staff last year. So it's not almost impossible. It's just we need to know how to do it. So Ben, is there anyone who's pushed 1 who can tell us what they found on the website about how you get a meeting? If not, I'll just read what I found. Ben, you've got anyone?
Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so here's the deal. I looked up my own congresswoman in Princeton, New Jersey, and also the congressperson from Santa Fe, New Mexico. They had different ways of requesting a meeting. For my congresswoman, there was a send me a message section where you fill in the blanks and let her know the topic of your message. But there was also a section that read, To request Congressman Watson Coleman's appearance at a meeting, speaking function or non-speaking function, please email or call her scheduler, Janine Gilmartin. So I would use the form to request the meeting, and if I didn't hear back within a week, I would follow up on the phone with the scheduler. For the congressman for Santa Fe, it said, if you're interested in inviting Congressman Lujan or a member of his staff to an event or request a meeting with the office, please fill out the scheduling request before. Both our DC and district office will do our best to process and accommodate your requests as quickly as possible. And it goes on and asks your name and your address and your phone and your email and the location. Do you want it in DC? Do you want the meeting in the district? What's the subject of the meeting, and additional details. Again, if I didn't hear back within a week from my online request, I would call his local office, the one nearest me, and follow up by phone. So here's some pointers. Just getting to your question now. Here's some pointers for the meeting but itself, and Ben will send all this around, followed by a sample agenda. First point, where are you about the idea of meeting with your member of Congress or state legislator? Are you terrified? Are you angry? Are you excited? Are you hopeful? I'm going to urge people to view a 5-minute clip of Citizen Climate Lobby's founder, Marshall Saunders, telling 800 attendees at the CCL conference in 2015 about his first ever meeting with a member of Congress 21 years earlier, to show even someone who founded CCL could be that terrified at their first meeting with a member of Congress. In 2015, CCL volunteers had 1,244 meetings with Congress or their staff, but their founder was terrified the first time he ever met with his member of Congress. So Ben will send the video link to that little excerpt. It's really funny, it's kind of poignant, and it's great. Here are a few key ingredients for the meeting, followed by a sample agenda. First, the purpose. Be able to share why you do this work. Write down some reflections on one of these questions. What moves you to work to have a government run by people, not money? 2, what values pull you to do this work? 3, share an experience that pulls you to work for a government run by people, not by money. Ben was talking about Madeline earlier in Charlottesville, Virginia, a dietitian who was kind of struck by corporate food industry really having a negative impact on our food system. That experience pulls her to do this work. So what moves you? What values do you have that pull you to do this work? Be able to share that in your meeting. I'm going to skip on in the name of time. Research, number 2, research your federal or state rep and find something you can thank them for. Go online, find what they support that you can thank them for. Be it they work to end homelessness or some other issue, at minimum, you can thank them for meeting with you. So what are your values that pull you here? What can you thank them for? This is number 3. Let me read from the website of another organization I worked with talking about the peace we bring to these meetings. Here's from their website, quote, remember, in your meetings with Congress or their staff, to hold yourself in the most peaceful manner possible. We want to embody the values and principles for which we're advocating. Getting support beforehand if needed. Maybe you're meeting with an office that's opposed to many of your values. They're more likely to hear you and welcome you back if you can connect with them and be gracious. Speaking your truth doesn't have to be done in anger. Anger almost always alienates. Clarify with your team that no matter what your member of Congress or staff says, you can seek to empathize with their perspective and ultimately regard them as your allies and partners. Aim to engage with them through a common inquiry. How can we most effectively deal with money and politics in ways that are uplifting and truly effective? Another group I work with, as you know, Citizens Climate Lobby, says it this way. And remember, they've been able to move 14 Republicans so far who were opposed to working to reverse climate change to begin to favor it. Quote from their website, we take the most generous approach to other people as possible. Appreciation, gratitude, and respect. We listen. We work to find common values, and we endeavor to understand our own biases. We're honest and firm. And lastly, a third group I work with, the Quaker Lobby Friends Committee on National Legislation, and they're working to cut the Pentagon budget when President Trump is proposing to increase it dramatically. They put it this way: when they're working with anyone, including Congress or their staff, quote, "We seek to find that of God in everyone," end of quote. You might have a low opinion of your member of Congress, but you have to decide whether your goal is to be right about that or to be effective in causing a transformation. It's up to you. But we'll never get Citizens United overturned with Democrats only or Republicans only. It has to be a transpartisan, cross-partisan effort. Ben, I'm a little nervous about time. I was going to have people sharing throughout this section, but I'm not. So the last two bits that I'm going to say are being clear on the issue. Ben will send the American Promise Laser Talk and the link to the conference call when we taught the Laser Talk, and be clear on the bill you're asking them to co-sponsor and eventually lead on. Ben will send the recent action sheet from Santa Fe on the We the People legislation. And for those working with state legislators, go to the American Promise website, click on Take Action, and then click on Organize in Your State to find if there's a bill in your state legislature. So I think I'm going to end with this. Maybe there's time for one question. Two things. So the ingredients are, A, be able to thank them for something, even if it's thanking them for meeting with you. B, be able to share what values or experience move you to work for a government run by people, not money. C, be clear that where we're coming from, wanting to be effective and wanting to cause a transformation, not wanting to make our elected officials wrong. D, be clear about our issues and learn the Laser Talk. E, be clear about your request that they co-sponsor House Joint Resolution 48 or another bill in Congress or the bill in your state legislature, and that they take further action, like writing an op-ed for the local newspaper. And F, ask when you can follow up to learn their decision on co-sponsorship. So here's the end, and the action for this month is to find the name of your member of Congress or state legislator, look up how you request a meeting with them, send the email requesting the meeting or make the request on their website, and follow up on the phone if you don't hear back from them. You might only get a meeting with a member of their staff. That's fine. Prepare well, have a great meeting. So at the end they say, the congressman has to meet with you guys, and I'll help set that up. So Ben is going to send you a lot of material that I've gone over and a little bit that I've not even gone over. But I think this should set you up to be in action. And the key piece for me is, if you're alone and you're a go-getter, you'll get it done. If you're with a group that will support you, then you'll support each other in making these requests and following up on the phone and getting the request sent in the mail or on their website. So thanks to everyone. Ben, I'm going to turn it right back over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks so much as always, and wonderful to hear from you, and great start on our getting a meeting with our member of Congress or state legislator training. And there's going to be more follow-up on this on the next call, which will be the second Saturday in May, which is May 13th. And so great questions from everyone too, and thanks for your participation. I would like to wrap up. It's 1:59 on the East Coast, and we do our best to keep these calls at an hour, as I know many folks have other things going on in their lives. But before we hop off for today, let's just review the next steps and how we get involved with the Uprising. So number one, start a new core team or American Promise Association in your community by filling out and returning the short form that I'll be sending each of you by email tomorrow. On the form, you can let us know how you want to get involved, or you can be proactive and send me an email at beng@americanpromise.net. And next, use this great training from Sam and the Citizen Action Center on our website to complete the action for our next call. As Sam mentioned, your next steps are send in the request for the meeting, follow up by phone, and if you don't hear back from them in a week, start gathering a few others to practice and go to the meeting with you. Do your research, practice, have a great meeting, and follow up to answer any questions you couldn't answer to hear their decision on the bill. I'll be sending an email that will outline these steps in more detail tomorrow morning with helpful links to get you all into action. That's the whole name of the game here, folks. So in the email, I'm going to include the recording for the more in-depth training that Sam did in February on getting letters to the editor published as well. Creating champions in the media is one of the best ways that we can support this work for the 28th Amendment. So there's also going to be an RSVP link for the next call, again, scheduled for Saturday, May 13th at 8:30. And I'd just like to end today's call with a brief quote in the spirit of summertime on the horizon and the beginning of my favorite season, baseball season. Jackie Robinson said, "The right of every American to first-class citizenship is the most important issue of our time." And I'll repeat that. Jackie Robinson said, "The right of every American to first-class citizenship is the most important issue of our time." I think many of us on the call will agree that that is the case, and I thank you all for being in action and joining on this call today. If you have any other follow-up questions and we weren't able to get to you because of time limits, please give me an email, beng@americanpromise.net, and look forward to speaking with everyone soon. Thanks so much and goodbye. Have a great day.